Howdy everyone! For today's Jolly Lark, we're going to get some game-ready Squigs painted up in 7 minutes each. With the release of the new Goblin rules, I'm excited about getting a whole bunch of these on the table. We're going to start out with a Squig primed with the new White Scar spray, which is a terrific white spray, and a great base for putting some contrast on top of. We're going to mix that SIGVALD Burgundy with some contrast medium, about 1-to-1 ratio. Brush full or two of the Burgundy, mix that with some contrast medium just to thin it down a little bit. Straight out of the pot, it goes on kind of dark for what I want to do here. So let's get the timer started when the brush hits the miniature and we'll see what we can do here. The goal is to have a purplish squig with a white belly. And this burgundy color is a great choice because it'll allow you to kind of color the body of the squig and the gums in the mouth in one pass. So timer is running in the bottom right there. I will pause that occasionally when I'm not actually painting, if we're swapping miniatures or something like that. But I'll try to keep myself honest here on the time it takes. Now, as you can see here, part of painting quickly is sometimes painting slowly. I'm going in relatively slowly along the edges. I want to paint in the gum line relatively carefully. You certainly can fix any mistakes that you make, and if you make a mistake, don't worry about it too much. But it's all faster if you can paint, sometimes faster to paint a little bit more slowly so that you don't have to go back and fix mistakes later. My goal here is to block in the upper body of the squig and all of the squig's gums with this diluted burgundy contrast paint. If the burgundy doesn't do it for you, I think almost any contrast paint would be fine. If you wanted a more traditional color, I think one of the red contrast paints, a Blood Angel's Red or something like that, similarly diluted with contrast medium, would work just fine. I do want my squig to add a little bit of detail. Just because you're painting something quickly doesn't mean you can't add a little touch. So as I'm painting this, I'm going to paint the upper parts of the body and the legs in the burgundy, but I'm going to leave the belly part white for now. And then we're going to hit that later with the same shade color that we use for the burgundy, which will allow us to shade the entire squig all in one go. And that's a big part of getting models painted and ready for the table quickly, is having an idea beforehand of what steps you're going to take. And using some shortcuts like using the same shade color for the white part of the body and the burgundy part of the body. Things like that. Using the same color for the body, the burgundy, as you're going to use for the gums. Little things like that that kind of allow you to do two things at once are nice. So with the body of the squig painted in the burgundy, I'm just going to go in and put a couple little kind of polka dots around the edge. You can see there that I've left the kind of the chin belly part white. I'm just going to put a couple little irregular dabs with the point of my brush. I will switch brushes at some point in the video, but I'm pretty well using this brush for the entire process. If I was willing to dry brush with it, which dry brushing is kind of hard on brushes, but if I was dry brushing with this brush, I probably could do the whole thing with this brush, which is just a nice like size 2 brush with a nice point. You don't really have to use super fine detail brushes as long as you've got a brush with a decent point. So, as always, when you're using contrast paints, you want to just kind of be aware if any of the areas of the contrast paint went on a little thick at all. Before it dries, you can kind of wipe a little bit of that contrast paint off. Just make sure you're not getting too many puddles of contrast paint, or else you can end up with some kind of weird looking areas on your miniature. So timer paused until the next step. Now, I'm showing you this one squig. We're going to follow the journey of this one little squig throughout the speed painting process, rather than showing all of the same step over and over again. So in between painting this squig, I'm also painting a few more at the same time. Batch painting models always speeds things up a bit because you can wait for something to dry on one model while you're working on the next one. So for this step, I'm just taking some of the PRO-ACRYL golden brown. It's kind of similar to the old snakebite leather color, kind of a yellowy brown, and just putting that in a rough layer all over the squig's teeth. All right, we're going to stop the timer for a second while we work on this other squig, because I did want to show you one of the squigs with an open mouth. Some of the squig poses have closed mouths where the teeth are one solid wall. Some of them have open mouths. And I thought it might be useful to also see one of the open mouth squigs. When I was doing the Burgundy stage, I just washed the entire inside of the mouth with Burgundy 2, which is a fine color for the inside of the mouth. And then I'm going in with the tooth color and also painting any of the little spikes and protuberances that are on the squig's body as if they've got kind of bony, teethy things sticking out all over them. So in painting this one, I realized I forgot to paint the toenails on our favorite squig whose journey we're following here. So let's start the timer back up again and just pop a little bit of the same golden brown on all of the toenails on our favorite leaping squig here. These new squig models are really terrific, and a lot of them are leaping up off the ground, supported by various mushrooms and stuff. Using here the Citadel Contrast GRYPH-CHARGER Gray, which is it's called gray, but actually has a lot of blue in it. It's kind of a pale blue-gray. I found that it's a really good solution for mushrooms. It has kind of a very nice fungal look to it. It settles in the cracks well. You could use that for all your mushrooms, or you could go wild and do reds and oranges or however you wanted. So back to the teeth here. The golden brown has dried. And what I'm going to do for the teeth is grab a little bit of a bone ivory color and starting from the tip of each tooth, kind of draw lines that are coming down from the tip outward. So each tooth is essentially a series of lines painted kind of starting from the point of the tooth and radiating outward until the tooth is mostly full of ivory, but you still get some of that jaggy bit of brown at the bottom. I think it's useful for painting the upper row of teeth I think it's easier to pull the brush downward, so I usually will flip the miniature over for doing the top row of teeth. The Jolly Lark painting handles, put in a little plug for those. They're great for flipping miniatures over. Go back in and paint a little bit of the same ivory on the toenails, just a little kind of a dot, dot, dot. The toenails are not super, super well defined on the squigs, but just putting a little spot of ivory on each toenail and you're good to go. A painted base is part of getting a miniature tabletop ready, so we're going to give the base a quick base coat of a watered down dark umber. This is from PRO-ACRYL, but it could be any dark brown that you like. I'm going to cover this in a little bit more detail in a basing basics video that's going to come out in the next week or two. That just kind of goes over some basic ideas of rocky, kind of the classic rocky dirt bases. So I'm starting with a watered down coat that'll flow into the cracks of the gravel. And then once you let that watered down paint fully dry, we're going to brighten it up a little bit. This is one of the new PRO-ACRYL colors, the warm brown, which I think is a great complement for basing to their dark umber. Just give that a light dry brush of the warm brown, let that dry real quick, and then another super light dry brush of the golden brown. And I think that's a nice three-step, base coat, something brighter, a little bit more of something brighter still, and then clean up the edges of the base rim with the same base coat that you started with. So, all right, timer pause. 7 minutes, 23 seconds. I think that's still, if I was running a mile, that would still be a 7-minute mile. Edges of the bases are still wet, but I'd call all these squigs tabletop ready. And if you've got a couple extra minutes to spend on each model, you can make them look even a little better still. So first thing I would do is make those teeth pop a little bit more. I also noticed that I missed a little teeny spot in between the teeth, which no big deal. But adding a quick layer of Nuln oil, which is a very thin black wash, this is the new formulation, just helps define all those teeth a little bit better. On an open mouth squig, you can do the same thing on all the teeth and maybe also push a little Nuln oil into the back of the mouth if you can. It'll give the mouth just a little bit more depth and make it look a little deeper and darker. You can also put a little Nuln oil under the model to give it a little bit of a shadow. The other thing that I have really been liking doing lately is using the new TYRAN blue shade paint. This isn't a contrast paint, but is one of the shade colors. So it's a much thinner consistency. It's much more transparent. And other than maybe on yellows, I feel like it works great to shade most colors. So what I'm going to do is take some of this TYRAN blue. This is going to push the body of the squig a little bit more towards the purple. And I'm going to apply this basically all over, including the white belly. I'm just going to take care not to get it on the gums, which will make the gums look more pink relative to the body of the squig. And I'm not going to put it on the very top surfaces of the squig. So the uppermost raised lumps and bumps, the spine area right at the top of the squig and the tops of its thighs are not going to get that blue wash. The edge of the base is looking a little bit spotty because I was trying to get that first game ready coat done quickly, so just touch up the edge of the base a little bit. After that, I'm going to pop a couple of static grass tufts on the base. I always like to do this after I feel like I've put on the final coat of paint on the rim of the base, because sometimes these static grass tufts can have individual hairs, fibers that hang down below the rim of the base, and you don't want to catch those with that final coat of paint on the rim. Squigs are all about teeth, so I want to make sure the teeth really have a nice little pop. Apologies, I'm playing around with a new photo setup that lets me get the camera a lot closer to the Mini. I just missed focus a little bit on this shot here, but I'm just putting a little bit of a brighter white. You could use white mixed in with your bone color. You could use a bright ivory from PRO-ACRYL is a great color, but just basically putting a single line of a brighter white kind of right down the middle of each tooth, and then you can use that same brighter color to just dot the eyes. Once those eyes are dotted, a really, really quick small wash of the Citadel Contrast Nasdrag Yellow will give the eyes a little bit of a yellow glow. And now I think we're done for real. So there you go. Got a 7-minute squig. Add a couple more minutes if you want to make it a little more detailed. It gives you a 10-minute squig. You could knock out a group of these in an evening and be ready to accompany your squig herds onto the table. So as always, thank you very much for watching. The watch time's appreciated. The subscribes are appreciated. Ask any questions you have down in the comments. And I look forward to seeing people's squigs hitting the table painted real soon. We'll see you next time on the next Jolly Lark.